Hello everyone at Cymatic TV. Boy, have we got a lot to go into today on today's energy update. I'm calling it the three amigos because there's been three X flares that have gone off from the sun, and they are very particular. And there was a real sort of confusion over the data because it sent out one of the satellites, and that's not the only technology it touched on. We're going to be going into that later on this channel. We're also going to be going into the chakra sequencing because I was off recording at the time of these X flares going off at a chapel. So we're going to be going into the chakra sequencing and seeing how that ties into the earthquakes as well and the chakras across the globe, and seeing how it also, this energy here, has affected maybe you in your aura, in your chakras, in your mental and in your physical health. So without further ado, let's get straight on in there.
Don't believe, just know. Cymatic TV, turning vibration into reality.
So here you can see that there was three X flares that went off from the sun. There was two X flares, and then there was an M flare, followed by a super, well, I say super X flare. It's the biggest one we've had in several years, up to around about sort of 6 years, I think, or something like that. In the way of an X flare, and it was an X 6.3. It's a little bit like earthquakes in a way, sort of magnitude sort of thing. And you can see here that just before that, the energy was really dropping away, and it's been this big sunspot that's been at the top of the sun, which we can see coming through here on the sun here at the moment, which was giving us a lot of this sort of activity. But one of the X flares was down on the right hand side, whereas filament energy was destabilized. And that's the only one that's really giving out a lot of ejecta of plasma more than anything else. It's been incredibly contained as a as an X flare, as we can see on the top left hand side, that sunspot there that kicks off and hits this X flare in our direction, that bright flash of light, as you can see, just coming through to the surface, just coming around to face the planet Earth at the moment. But as I said, it was accompanied before with a sort of a filament energy as well, which is what we're seeing on the predictions, the solar flare predictions, and how it's going to impact Earth. There is one other thing that we should notice, and no one is talking about it, is these coronal holes. Now you have one that literally, it almost serpentines right across the equator of the sun and goes right up to the northern hemisphere. Now this has been affecting the earthquakes, and I think this is actually going to affect the Earth a lot more than those X flares. That's right. I think it's going to be a lot more potent to earthquakes and also the overall energy. And we're going to be going into that in a short while. As we can see from this X flare there that just sparked off there, it's the only real sunspot that's active, that's facing the sun at the moment. There is ones that's going away. And at the beginning of the sequence, which you can just see, there was that eruption, which we can see a lot better here. We're just on the right hand side as it comes through. We can see the ejecta of that plasma of the filament energy, and as I said, that's the thing that's going to be happening more. There it goes there, flying off in the direction between the sun, between the Earth and Mars. So it's not really hitting the Earth at all, really. There's a bit of a side swipe going on, but there's nothing really coming in our direction. And we can see this on the LASCO satellites. Here we can see here, this is a little bit closer to the sun, and we can see the ejectors coming out from all those previous eruptions. There's been a lot of M flares as well, and the M flares has almost taken the place of the normal at the moment. But these X flares that come off doesn't really put out a lot of particles in our direction. So you can just see the main one is off to the right, and that's what's got to do with that filament energy more than anything else. And as I said before, I think we're going to be moving into a section of the next year and a half where filament energy is going to become a lot more important. And this is the information, the problem with the information we were getting coming out. We weren't getting the full information as quickly because one of the satellites went down that was receiving the information, and that's the GOES satellite. Now, this satellite system, which observes the sun, there's a multitude of ones. So we try and pick it up from different sources whenever we can. But this also affected the telecommunication systems that we had in North America. And in North America, the eruptions were affecting sort of mainly sort of networking sort of scenarios. And Ben over at Suspicious Observers goes into this in greater detail. And I think he's very right here that solar flares can affect the world in multitudes of different ways. It can affect also you in multitudes of different ways. It depends on the composition of the X-flare. And we've seen these X-flares that go off that tend to be more sort of bark than bite, as it were. It seems to be the ones coming off at the moment. And that's because it's coming out as pure air and pure fire as well. And this has been a recurring theme with the energies through February, because February is that purification month. We seem to have been within us as in humans, it seems to be purifying us, getting us ready for that active or being action or march, which is on march, as it were, was marching ahead. And this seems to be this breaking point. These three X-flares here is, I get the feeling here is almost as kind of going, okay, have you managed to sort your stuff out? Have you managed to do your purification? In that case, let's get on and let's start doing. And we can see this also within the technology. It's sort of focusing on these networks rather than on, say, like power outages, earthquakes or volcanoes, or sort of sort of railway lines or sort of that sort of thing of sort of manufacturing. But it's mainly on the sort of networks, on the social networks, like Google, Apple, all the phone networks as well, YouTube as well. Multitudes of places were actually touched by this sort of scenario. And these X flares that went off were not registering on the flare prediction. So let's just have a quick look at that. This is the first one we're looking at here at the moment, and it's actually just showing off that filament energy. As you can well see, it's floating out there. It's just giving a side swipe to the Earth. And that's the Enlil spiral, and the Iswar has got the same situation going on, where it's really only sort of showing it going off to the right, and there's a slight touch on the Earth's magnetic field, as we can see as it comes through here, and it's going to be coming through on the 24th. So to look out for tomorrow. This is water element as well. So this is the emotional compact or the emotional impact of the solar activity at the moment. And with that fire and air that went straight through the system and went through so quickly that I'm not sure it actually sort of registered a lot within the geological system. The things that should be looking out for is storms and sort of hurricanes and that sort of thing. And I'm looking at one particular place, which is in southwest of Africa, out by Madagascar and places like that. Just having a look at that and seeing if that gets built up through the electrical currents that has been sent through, because that is what the X-flare is all about. It is mainly all about the electrical currents. Now, how does that play into us as people? This is really where, and I was thankful that I was actually dowsing the other day, yesterday, when these X-flares were coming through, because it gave me a good opportunity to feel the energies and see what the vibration was of that without even knowing that the X-flares had come through. And as I came into the energies of as I was dowsing the female line at one of these churches, it was really vibrant, zippy energy. And it actually plays through on the chakra sequencing. Now, I will have got a video coming out tomorrow on a report on all of that investigation on the ley lines that go through a church, which is what I'm calling Little Lords. But this is just the chakra sequencing that is coming through at the moment. I'll be dowsing a much, much bigger line on my way back, because I want to check that out and see what comes of it. But here we're going to be getting a message from the Earth, and we're also going to go through the chakra sequencing. So it's just
let's just get ourselves into meditation mode, as it were. Okay, so that's it. Everything's dropped nicely now. There, I can feel the first connection in my sternum. Oh, it's so light. It goes up to the crown and the root at the same time. But there is no sort of earthing going on in regards of the roots here. It's absolutely beautiful. You know, the roots are perfectly in the ground, but there's no stress on it, and the connection is really easy. And maybe this has to do with the fact that the lack of human intervention on this place at the moment. So obviously I've let the sequencing go through me there, so I'm just going to wait for it to come back to the sternum at some point. There it is there. Impeccable. Go to the crown and the root there. And then we're into the throat chakra. Then it gets heavy on the root. And we're into the sacrum. And these two play with each other, the throat and the sacrum energy. Back up to the throat, but there's a bit of heart involved in it as well. And this is really starting to charge. It's almost as if it's caught between the two. Then it loops up to the crown and the root, and it comes straight back to the beginning again. So there's no solar plexus in any of this. It's really, it's much, much lighter than anything else. What's the message sequencing behind that? This may be the gateway to the action of energy. So as I was talking about earlier on, we were, February seemed to be that purification month, that sorting things out. We're coming to the end of February now, and it's almost as if we're going through that door of action. Now, door of action as well, if you like, your sacrum is where you have your fundamental desires. So fundamental desires are like, I am hungry. That's what the fundamental desires are. And then you get to your heart's desires. So I am hungry and I would like to eat some spinach and some ricotta pasta. That sort of thing. That's a heart's desire. But the fundamental desire is to eat. So this is all about putting into action our fundamental desires. And this is where it gets connected to the heart and the throat chakra, because it's building up that idea now that we know we want to eat, and now we're dressing the plate with all our desires, our heart's desires. And that's when the throat starts really kicking in, because we need to express those desires. It's not in our minds. It's not in the third eye here. It's really to do with action, to do with physically engaging in everything. Okay, so I think that's what the message is behind the chakra sequencing. Let's just go, and I'm going to use this line a little bit like the metro or the underground service. I'm just going to connect to that.
So in order to fully understand what I'm doing there, let's just have a look at the earthquakes, because I think this is a really good indicator of the world chakras and how it plays out within us. So here you can see here we have the world earthquakes, the earthquakes that's going on around the world at the moment, and you have the chakra map, my chakra map, which is at the top there, and the main ley lines that go around the world. So let me just sort of make that slightly smaller so we can see that a little bit better, easier. There we go. That's that, right? Okay. So let's just have a look at these chakras here on the earth here. Now, the main things that have been going on, and this is what I've been noticing mainly a lot from the earthquakes, according to the chakras. You've got a lot of build up here within the sacrum in North America around Mount Shasta. And then you have that Alaskan bridge build up. And that's almost, it's like a bottleneck of energy. And it goes across that sort of, that yellow line that goes across the top there, that plays it out, which in the yellow line is very, very neutral. And it appears to be in a situation where these earthquakes are accumulating to build up the energy because the magnetic field of the earth is reducing. And this all has to do with pole shift. Things are getting a lot more in line, a lot more in rhythm with one another. And that's to do with the earthquakes. It's also to do with volcanoes. But it's also to do with the other geomagnetic effects such as aurora borealis, the protons that come into the earth. It seems to be coming like wave after wave, and these waves seem to be almost joining together into a very, very very sort of obvious sort of sequencing. So what we can see here is that build up, as I say, in the sacrum, but there's nothing in the root. Now, if you remember on the chakra sequencing, which I did, I was saying the root was really light. It was really, loose and letting go, as it were. And that's what we can see within these earthquakes. There wasn't a great deal in the throat and the third eye, which is up by sort of Mount Fuji, up in that section there. And there was a little bit around the solar plexus down by Australia. But the main thing is that heart chakra, I think, more than anything else, because this energy is flowing through and flowed through to the heart chakra. And as it flowed through to the heart chakra, then it's sort of like it sort of engages with your heart's desires. And this is what I'm saying in the chakra sequences. It's engaged within your heart's desires and then regroups. And we can see this within the purification of the month of February. Now, in the next sequencing, now this is sort of 12 hours afterwards, this is on the 22nd, at the time of the X-flares, we can see that Alaskan Ridge sort of section there, which is at the top by the map, just right of the my chakra map, you can see that it's allowing a lot more through now, and there's a lot more this sort of chain that's going through the sort of earthquakes of the earth at the moment. And it's just dying or drawing back from the heart chakra, and the solar plexus has calmed down. The other thing that you should notice as well is that the root chakra is coming back in. And this is what I'm talking about, of March being a month where we have to get on and do things. Get on and imply this sort of common sense revolution that we're getting, that's coming through the whole system at the moment. And then after that, the following section after that on the with the earthquakes is here we can see it starts building up again. It's reduced totally from the heart. It's a little bit in the crown. There's not so much around this is the next 12 hours afterwards. There's not so much around the solar plexus still. But here it's more sort of building up, back up again within the sacrum. This is about fundamental desires. So although February is not finished, it's still that purification that's coming through. And I think these X flares here was so quick. It was almost as if it was like the bell had rung for playtime or the end of playtime. And now it's a time to get on. So, it's really been affecting mainly that sort of those fundamental desires and that third eye and that throat chakra and that heart chakra as well. But the crown and the root seems to be in alignment with itself. And that's your vertical energy. That's our raison d'etre. That's the reason we do things more than anything else. There was one other thing, and this is what I was talking about the other day about the pause after the impact. If we go into here and we see the magnetosphere, This is the Earth and the magnetic field of the Earth, and how it's taking impacts in the way of pressure from the surrounding space around us. Now, this is obviously affected by solar activity, and as you can see there, it just dies off, it quietens down. Now, this is just before the big X6 flare, and it's almost as if, like, sometimes it's like, if you imagine, like, we're going into if you feel, you're having a car accident, when time slows down. And there was this sensation here where everything was up in the air and things started slowing down more than anything. And this is like preparing ourselves for that impact of that solar flare. But it went through so quickly, it was affecting mainly the fire and air, the mental stability within us, the mental health, but there was also physical aspects of it. So let's get into how it's affecting your physical energy, your physical side of your life, and also your mental health. So for the physical side, personally, I think there was a lot to do with the heart basically going on, and there's lots of evidence as well to prove that when there is high solar activity, there is increased problems connected to heart and cardiovascular sort of situations. And certainly the build up to the X flare the final X flare, the big X flare from the first two, there was also a build up in the heart as well, as if like there was an anticipation coming through. So you might have found that you had a circulatory problems, cardio problems. You might have also felt a bit of anxiety as well, because that produces that anxiety. And this is where we cross over into the mental health side of things. For a lot of people who are, say, like depressed or sort of feeling very down, I would have thought you would have actually felt a lot more zippier, a lot more happier, a lot more at one with yourself. So it would have helped people who have depression and so forth. But for people who have sort of delusionary or hyper sort of depression, sort of a manic depression in a way, it could tip you over the edge. So I would be very attentive, and over the next sort of 2 or 3 days, making sure you take time out for yourself. Go dowsing like I do. It's the greatest form of meditation that you could ever possibly have. I absolutely adore it, and it certainly puts us back into alignment with who we are, makes us feel realistic to the situation that is going on around us, so we don't take everything upon our shoulders. So that can really help you in a mental sort of keep mental stability for your mental health. For those of you who are sort of like have felt a little bit down over the past few weeks, and I can understand that because it has become very heavy, the energy, as we're going through this sort of pole shift sort of stuff. I would get on and do. It's a way of getting yourself out of a rut as well. There'll be a lot of help at the moment in this next few days here to keep you active, to keep you pushing on and trying to produce the best version of yourself, basically, more than anything else within this world around us. So, this is how the sun can affect you and affect me and affect all of us collectively. Now, let's have a look at that a little bit in the way of the mental health collectively. We've seen a lot of protests from farmers, from truckers, and I think people are waking up to the idea. And I think this is what this pause is before we go on and actually do and engage with this sort of common sense sort of revolution. There is this sort of like understanding that the problem is not the governors, the problem is the governance. So in the way in which we participate within the governance. And I think obviously with modern technology, and this is a very good possibility, where we can all become very much more active and engaged in the process of our own governance, rather than leaving it and depending it upon one or two people that does not, that may not necessarily have your whole heart's desires, your desires at their heart, as it were. They're not really looking out for you. They're looking out for other people who might be paying them a lot more money. I don't know. You'll have to ask them rather than me. But I think personally, within the collective, we have this golden opportunity to start seizing sort of, or engaging in the governance that we have around ourselves, and allowing that common sense sort of attitude to come to the surface. And I think the sun is really helping us here. It's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next month, certainly over March. I personally think there's going to be a drop down in activity and a re-increase in activity at the end of the summer, beginning of the autumn period in the Northern Hemisphere. So around about sort of August, September, October, November time. And then I think we're going to be moving really into the downward slope from 2025 within this solar cycle. So the energy update, that's what it's been for you. That's what it's been for me. That's what it's been for us. Tomorrow I've got that report coming out and dowsing at that church, so we'll get messages from the earth as well, because I think that's really important to understand what the vibration is coming through from the universe, through the sun, through the earth, and then through you and I into the collective. So yes, thank you very much for being here. I really do appreciate your support. We also got a lot of stuff on the Astro Flower, our sister channel. We go into a lot more about the elements, the fire, the air, water, and earth energies. And that's one thing that I forgot to say as well. The earth energies that are coming through those coronal holes, completely forgot about it. That is what the action's going to be all about. Well, this is where we actually physically engage with this sort of logical evolution that we're going through. So yeah, it's been a bit of a hair-raising sort of like last 2 weeks. It's been very difficult to get the information through, but now we know that that's down to satellites going out, particularly GOES satellites going out. But I think this earth energy that's coming through from these corona holes is really going to help to galvanize the action that we're going to be taking in March. Yes, in the meantime, I guess that's all that's left for me to say. Until the next time, don't forget, life should be fun, so please do enjoy.